Good evening and a warm welcome to all our panelists and attendees. It is a pleasure to have you all here at the first webinar of International Lighting Summit 2020. Before we begin with the panel discussion, I would like to introduce you all to our esteemed panelists here today. Our moderator for today's discussion, Praveen Thampi, Creative Director, the Ministry of Light. Joining him on the panel are Richard Taylor, Graphic Strategy. Nancy Clayton, CEO, Clayton and Associates Inc. USA. Architect Sanjay Gulati, Managing Director, Principal, Gensler, India. Jimmy Mistry, Chairman and Managing Director, Della Group. Architect Zarir Mulan, SEZA. Architect Bobby Mukherjee and Associates. Architect Viraj Patki, CEO, PG Patki Architects. A special thank you to our associate partner, India Bulls LED, our supporting partners, Lutron, Hybeck, and Avi Lighting, who are also a key part of the International Lighting Summit. Would like to inform all the attendees that the panel would be addressing to your questions in the last 15 minutes of this panel, and hence you are requested to post your questions in the Q&A section. I would now like to call upon Mr. Sumit Gandhi, Chairman and Managing Director, ABEC Exhibitions and Conferences, to address the panel and the audience.
Hi, good evening and a very warm welcome to the first edition of the International Lighting Summit webinar series. Trust all is well with you and your families are staying safe. On behalf of ABEC Exhibitions and Conferences and ITE Group, it's my privilege to have you all. As the world and our country is going through a serious pandemic, and we understand the current situation provides absolutely virtual way of going ahead, we are committed to and provide unconditional support to the lighting fraternity. Following a successful relaunch of International Lighting Summit in 2019, themed Lighting Coming of Age, the summit enjoyed an attendance of over 400 plus delegates with over 35 panelists, 50 lighting consultants, and support of over 15 top lighting manufacturing companies. The International Lighting Summit is a part of our long-term vision in the Indian subcontinent, and our core priorities forms one of our core priorities in developing the industry. The support that we have received from our advisory board members, all who are part of the panel, have been extremely encouraging in creating strategic models for the Indian lighting industry. And in our constant endeavor to promote interactions within the architecture and lighting industry, we proudly present our first webinar theme, Lightning Transitioning to a Bright Future. I especially thank our moderator, Mr. Praveen Thampi, and all the panelists for taking their valuable time out for this webinar. So without further ado, let us begin. I would like to hand over the platform to Praveen to have his opening remarks.
Good evening, everyone. I would say good evening to all our viewers in India, good afternoon to all our viewers in UK and Europe, and good morning to all our viewers in the US, the American subcontinent. I'm told that we have over 800 plus registrations for this webinar. So in fact, considering that we had 400 attendees last year at the ILS, we have 800 plus viewers from all across the world this time for this webinar. We have an expert panel with panelists from UK, US, and from all different architectural representations from India. This webinar, in fact, is a prelude to the International Lighting Summit theme this year, which is Lighting Transitioning to a Brighter Future. We're planning to have this this conference this year in December on the 17th and 18th. That's what's the plan as of now, if things go well. In Delhi is where we are planning this. I hope the lockdown will be completely lifted by then. I mean, there are multiple thoughts on this, but I'm hoping that things will be back to normal. And if it is not back to normal, then we are going to discuss today what will be the scenario and how design is going to change and how lighting is going to change to the future, depending on whether this is a transient phase or it's going to be staying forever. Well, we have a very interesting survey that has been done by Richard Taylor in the UK and Europe. He has actually done a survey last week, and he has the results of it. So we will start with that survey, because that gives the basis of the discussions today and how we're going to take this forward. So I think I'm going to hand over to Richard first, so that he makes his presentation on what are the findings of his survey. So we have some real-time data to discuss things, and then we take the discussion further from there. Richard, over to you.
Okay, this is the moment of truth. Thank you, Praveen. I'm not sure if the microphone is working, but nobody's waving at me, so that means it's all working. That's a great sign. The fact that we're actually meeting up here online today with Zoom is amazing, and Praveen, you were quite correct. I'm already very impressed by the participant numbers, which are going up slightly faster than the British currency is going down. And so this is a very positive overall development. So also from my side, thank you hugely for the organization for this, but also thank you very much to all of you who are taking part today to join into this event, the first event in a series before the culmination at our big platform event in December, all being well, in the beautiful New Delhi. I love numbers. My sister actually says I like numbers more than people. So a few months ago, I looked at this. I'd actually been in China and a few other countries, and decided it would be a really good idea not just to join the amateur experts, which we see all around the world on the question of viruses and epidemics and everything else, but actually to focus on something which I understand, which is a little bit more about lighting. So without further ado, I'd like to share some research information, which is actually being published in a couple of magazines over the next few weeks, and will also be on my LinkedIn page in a little while. So if you want more details, this is just a really short version. Keep an eye out later this week for that a little bit more. I deliberately chose this picture. I love working with photographers, and I always recommend having a look at Unsplash. It's a brilliant resource if you like some interesting images and some different takes. Even towards the end of last year, the lighting industry, depending on which part of the world you're in, was having a tough time. And the events in January made this a little bit more complicated. People weren't quite sure what they should be doing with the market. Should we be going cheaper? Should we be putting new features or new ideas into the mix? Or should we just be looking for more and more differentiation? Of course, then, bam, January, we started to hear about this very localized challenge to supply chains, to electronics, to materials. And that went very quickly from a supply chain challenge which was localized to obviously the hugely damaging, at a human level, I'd also like to emphasize, not just an economic level, pandemic which we now find ourselves confronted. And I think we need to remember that at all times, is that we're not just talking about something which is a nuisance for industry, but also something which is having a really huge human impact in many, many ways, and probably for a considerable period of time. That notwithstanding, I'd also like to use the next few minutes to share with you what over 400 people were kind enough to share with me. So in fact, in total 403 people responded to my request for their opinions. This was a LinkedIn survey, which actually I put online in the middle of March. I planned on taking it offline by the end of March, but had so many people that I thought, right, let's leave this running for a little bit longer because it's interesting and it's fun right now. I then went through the process of interviewing a few. The fact that we can meet up on Zoom right now is indicative of the fact that our working worlds have adopted technologies, which I wouldn't say are new. We've all had Skype for a few decades, but which at least mean that now we're in a very different position to chat to each other around the planet, respecting, of course, time zones and also regional possibilities. I was very happy to see that the survey wasn't just answered by a few manufacturers or a few lighting designers, but really by perfect cross-section from the industry. So I had architects, I had contractors, I had facility managers, consultants, even a few government representatives. So in that respect, it was a very, very nice mix. And as you can see from the country breakdown, I'm quite humbled actually that lots of people, of course, who I personally know around Europe, around the UK, they responded, but also quite a few from the United States, from the Southeast Asian region, from the Middle East. They all took part in this. And of course, the fundamental question was, what's this changing for you? What's happening? What's the problem? So, this ranged quite significantly from travel restrictions. We can't go and see our suppliers. We can't go and see our customers. To we're going to have to work more online. Supply chain disruption was a major issue, which still is significant. And supply chain, in that sense, not just in terms of where components coming from, but also how are we getting components into the market. We're very fortunate in many countries that governments have partly stepped in, but then I would also say in my case as a small business, the government doesn't really have us on the radar. And if you think about the way the lighting industry is broken down, a lot of designers, a lot of architects, a lot of suppliers, a lot of product designers, a lot of tech people like me, we are all very small businesses. And so the government programs to rescue an airline or rescue a big hotel chain, that's great, and that's important because it saves futures and jobs. But it does mean that we within our little industry need to think about how we can work better and how we can work around this. Health and welfare is a big issue, and I think this is going to be one of the single biggest impacts, not only short term, but also medium term, is how coming out of this on the other side. And I'm not going to speculate about when a vaccination is available or how we can best protect ourselves. We have much smarter people already doing that very publicly. But thinking in a more pragmatic sense, how can we look at this from a lighting perspective in terms of creating safer buildings and improving the overall building space? We hear a lot of people with depressing stories. This is going to ruin the industry. Things will never be the same again. I think probably the second statement is true. But whether or not this will be the end of industries, I genuinely believe is a question about how flexible and how creative people are. When LEDs became mainstream, and most of us, I guess, on this panel can remember the exciting changes from incandescent through fluorescent through LEDs, and there were a lot of companies where people looked at them from the outside and said, they're not going to make it. There's no way. They can't make that transition. And in fact, even the same, I remember speaking to a huge lighting company back in about 1996 who said, we're going to dominate the T5 market. There's nobody else is big enough to get into the T5 market. Yeah, well, that didn't go so well. And so I think one of the challenges which we have to accept in the industry is that, number one, and I'm borrowing from my many years that I spent living very happily in Germany, people who are pronounced sick usually recover the fastest. And the second thing is that this isn't a question about an industry being wiped out. It's a question about an industry reinventing itself. And this is what we need to think. I'm sure that there are major impacts, and I'm already seeing these today from my clients in Europe and also in other adjacent markets around this region. But I'm sure there are quite significant impacts already for shop lighting, for offices. A lot of people are now discovering that you no longer need to sit into an office to be very effective. I'm sitting in my little office at my place. I think most of the people on this panel are sitting in a variety of home offices and other safe places where they can work, and we're very fortunate to have those opportunities. But also the question is, for example, in education, in food service, in clinical environments, how can also lighting there play a more interesting role in helping design the future? We all spend most of our times evolving. I think I would probably make a safe bet that anybody who's in their working careers for longer than 5 years is not doing the same thing now that they were doing when they left university. I'm pretty sure about that bet. And what we can see is that this evolution, of course, is driving changes. I asked some of the respondents what would they change personally. And of course, few international trips, much more time working from home, but also more online meetings. You know, a few years ago, if you were working online, you weren't properly working. You know, if you're not in the office, you can't be focused, you can't be engaged with the team. So we need to think, what does that actually mean? And how can we really work about this and work in a more enjoyable way? How can we drive the shift in the industry, which needs to happen because this is a social shift? And maybe we'll also see some interesting changes on collaboration platforms like BIM systems and BIM integration, and possibly even how lighting design tools are used to make also lighting design a more interactive role than the currently, you send me the plan, I send you a design, you make your comments, I send you an update. How can we make that more interesting in the future and also more collaborative? Transitioning into a brighter lighting future also means that we need to think how lighting can become smarter in the environment. And I don't just mean differentiated, and I'm not going to say this means only about connected lighting, but for example, are there ways to use lighting to help cleanse a building, to dynamically manage the facility and help people and other resources within the facility get access more quickly? I was speaking to a client a couple of days ago who was looking for pathogenic detection to say, for example, if people with an elevated temperature enter a space, can the lighting reflect this to alert very visually human resources, facility managers and also possibly medical teams to the fact that there could be possible contamination risks. Maybe this sounds a little bit Big Brother, maybe this sounds a little bit high tech, but I think we need to be open to these ideas of ways of looking for how lighting doesn't just stay the roughly 2% of the building spend, which it is today, but how lighting can take in greater functions. And especially one of the projects I work on quite a lot has to do with airports and aviation transportation, how to think about, for example, with stations and airports, how lighting can also help transition that hugely affected industry back to, I wouldn't say the old normal, but at least a new form of normal. So I think today we'll be spending a lot of time chatting and discussing the bright new future for lighting. And as I say, check out the report or check out the information, and I'm very, very happy to take any questions later on in the session today. I will now stop screen sharing and hand back over to Praveen. So thank you for listening to me.
Well, Richard, I think that was some great insights we have to start our discussion. So the first thing we need to look at now is whether this kind of scenario is going to stay forever, or is it a transient phase? We need to really look at whether people are happier working from home, or we still need to go back to offices. This is a good time, like a holiday, work from home, but later on, maybe we're planning to, we are all social beings. So my take on it is that we want to be more social, and office is one of the places where people become more social. So let's look at this from a perspective of a residential perspective, a hospitality perspective, from a commercial office perspective, and public transportation like airports and railway station kind of a perspective. I'll start with Jimmy. Your take on whether this is going to be a transient phase or you think this is going to stay for long, and how will lighting and design change in general with what's happening today?
Good evening, everyone. Praveen, nobody can say with affirmity that it's going to last till this period of time. It's a very, very dynamic situation. Lockdowns will be lifted up. We might have to go in for a second stage of lockdown, third stage of lockdown. We have no idea. So hence, it's very, very dynamic. But I keep saying this, things that are changing right now are going to stay forever. It's not going to be back to normal ever. And I'm talking in terms of commercial and physical spaces. I'm talking in terms of hospitality spaces, and I'm talking in terms of residential spaces, because all three spaces have been impacted and they will change. The first biggest and major impact that's happened as soon as the lockdowns happened was people working out of homes. And now this is a reality. Organizations at a management level are on an extreme cost-cutting measure. Before this, I got off on another webinar where at least 10 industrialists were there, and they were all talking about cost cutting. And those cost cutting measures will entail organizations to look deep within and say which functions of an organization can work out of home without impacting productivity. Now, people who are going to work out of home will need a whole lot of knowledge to professionalize themselves and make the home working environment and atmosphere. Scope for lighting designers and lighting players to look for something positive, because the numbers are going to be in millions. Organizations like Philips and so many other companies are already on their way with IoT lighting and trying to offer solutions across to people. So this is a change that's going to happen. Let's look at offices. Lighting in offices will change because people will want to now departmentalize to mitigate the risk of infection. Also to maintain efficacy of whatever medium they are using to contain the virus and the microbes. So lighting over here will also have to be redone in a way to speak. Areas are going to be redefined, areas are going to be partitionalized, and from an open space environment. So offices will see changes in lighting. Offices will see changes in getting in of UV lights for disinfectant, for the baggages and parcels and stuff like that. Also, they may look at UV lighting, disinfecting cafeterias when no human being is occupying it. And that would be a more simpler process, because cafe is going to be one of the main bone of contention for people to quickly spread this virus, or so to speak. So these are some of the areas that are going to change. Hospitality industry is never going to remain the same, but human interface from hospitality cannot go. Hence, a lot of innovations will happen. As things unfold in the next couple of months, we'll get to see what we've estimated or what our guesstimations were and what has been the actual rollout. Buffets will never be served the way we had pre-COVID ever again. There will be human beings behind every single dish. So now there'll be smaller compartmentalized counters across, and a human being is going to serve you. He will not allow you to touch the lid and contaminate the whole area. So lots of changes that are going to be there forever. Contactless systems are going to come through and through. People working out of home is one area of interest to me. How can our industry and how can webinars like these provide a solution to people and some form of a basic education? What are the level of lumens levels required for a person to work out of home? What are the right kind of lighting required for a Zoom call or a web call? And how can a person's moods be affected and impacted when a person is working out of home for 8 straight hours? How can circadian lighting rhythms be used? At least people acclimatize themselves with these kind of things. Lots of retrofit options are available. People should be able to use a very, very inexpensive method of changing the light temperature and hence depicting what is happening outdoors into their own homes, and give the right kind of lighting for their work environment, which is task light, ambient lighting for Zoom calls. They can do it with a 700 rupee IoT bulb and an app, which is available readily on various platforms now. Or they can invest in a whole package, including automation of Alexa or Echo, and control every single thing across them, including the lighting, and make their work time more impactful and more usable.
Great, Jimmy. I understand your perspective, but my question again still stands. Is this a transient phase or is it going to be permanent? Now, for example, I'll give you a simple example. Now, I've been working from home possibly for the past 5 years. Okay? I have an office, well-established office in Bombay, one well-established office in Dubai. But I can very well work from home. And for me, this is nothing new. This lockdown scenario is nothing new. But I choose to go to office when I want to. That's because there is an office culture which creates, that kind of ambience. And, it's not always good to be working from home. People always do want to have a different world where they work. So work from home, yes, it can be a short-term scenario, but I don't think in the long term, once we have a vaccine in place, this is going to be staying forever. Once the vaccine is in place, I think, so at the max, if I'm looking at it, I don't see this going beyond maybe 1 or max 2 years, is what my take on it. But anyway, let's look at this. I would like...
Praveen, sorry, before you go further. So let me clarify. I never said that offices will be replaced off by work from home. Work from home will take away 70%. Collaborative spaces will be required. People will need to go back to a hub. Again, have a collaborative work environment. So that collaborative environment will be very different from a permanent office. So this is the point I'm trying to drive.
Agreed. So now I'll possibly get Mr. Sanjay Gulati from Gensel online, because they do a lot of commercial office spaces. Sanjay, I would like to have your view on this as to whether this is a transient phase or you think this is going to stay on forever.
Okay, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so there are 2 camps, like I said. There's one camp which will say panic and say, no, everything is going to change. Like 70% people will be starting to work from home. And there's another camp which is definitely thinking that this is only a phase which is going to pass and we're going to get back to normal, because human beings are social animals. We like to socialize. We like to get back to office and work. We need to see people. And also, this could be a phase where people are performing from their homes out of fear of jobs. They want to perform. They're really working hard because there are no distractions right now. Once you start opening up the pubs and like the environment, the social environment, once it opens up and you have malls and cinema halls to go to, and once you find a cure, nobody would want to work from home. So that's the other camp. So we don't know what is the right thing, what will come out of this whole situation. But there could be a initial phase where you need to fix certain things. There could be a midterm where you need to plan for certain like occupancies in the offices. So people may not want to totally change their office environment. They may say, okay, we'll come back to the normal, but what is it that we need to fix in the short term or in the midterm? They'll try to fix those things. Now, because we do a lot of workplace design, one of the largest workplaces in India, share of workplaces in India and elsewhere in the world. So we've been doing a lot of surveys around work from home, and we've been doing a lot of surveys around what the life is going to be like. So definitely there are these two camps, and we see a split of opinion. And some clients, they're saying, okay, we will build, our offices are going to remain, nothing is going to change. For the short term, we look at low occupancies. So how do we mitigate the initial risk that we have? So we have touchless washrooms, lighting systems which are touchless. So how do you automate a lot of things? So automation is going to be big in workplace. Then I think we need to, we have lighting experts here, would let them talk about UV lighting. So there's thought around what is the kind of lighting in the offices. UV lighting may be used to screen some of the baggage or sanitize some of the things, but there could be chambers. You walk through those chambers to disinfect yourself. So there's a lot of research that is required in that area. But what we know for sure is people are talking more around the health and wellness scenario. So they want healthy environments. So they'll be definitely focus on daylight. How do you bring more and more daylight into the offices? Are there balconies? People may want to step out into open areas, work from open areas rather being inside closed offices. So terraces will play a very key role in office environments. So when I said sunlighting, daylighting, all of that, this is going to become very key. So how do you measure this? So in the lighting system, we already have automation where you can measure daylight and all of that. There are systems, but it will become more and more something which will become more prominent, and people will ask for these things. Okay, we want to see how much daylight we have. So have you taken care of this or not? Then there'll be focus on the kind of light. Let's say today we only talk about color temperatures. So let's say the lighting industry comes up with a light which is more healthy. Maybe it may not be able to address virus, but if it is healthier and the color temperatures which are more healthier, so there'll be a focus and shift towards that. And who knows, the lighting industry may come up with some solutions saying this kind of lighting is more healthy in the office environments. So this is what we see, and it's fully right now. People are just taking a shot at whatever comes their way. They are thinking how to be contactless, what are the measures that they can take, and how can they come back to work. It's a very short-term thing that we've seen right now. So the long-term impacts are yet to be seen in terms of the industry shift. So there have been times when industry has shifted from, let's say, CFL to LED completely. So who knows, in the lighting industry, there could be a complete shift and there could be a lighting system which is, let's say, more healthy. So you could just see a big shift in how people look at lighting in future.
Well, yeah, I guess that's another topic that we would really like to touch upon, UV lighting. There's a lot of buzz in the industry about how UV can be used to sterilize stuff, whether we can work under UV lighting and stuff like that. I would like Nancy to take up this and give us some perspective on whether UV, a particular wavelength of UV, can actually kill the coronavirus, and whether it is easy to kind of sterilize things with UV lighting, and whether it is harmful, harmless. Give us your perspective on this, Nancy, please.
Well, thank you. Yes, we've been working on this for quite a while, and I have to give credit to the University of Oregon in the US. They've been doing a lot of research on this particular topic, and even of how air quality is better when you're closer to a window or to daylight. And like Sanjay said, we need more daylight in our buildings. I could not agree more that everything about daylight, from the circadian cycle, all of that. But back to the particular nanometers of UV lighting, I would caution line designers from jumping on this and thinking it's safe for everyone. Yes, 254 nanometers is kind of the sweet spot for disinfection for materials. But like Richard mentioned, you know, there's the type of materials.
Nanometers particularly can kill the coronavirus.
Yes, 254 can do it.
Okay.
And that will, basically 254 is used for disinfection of different types of viruses and bacteria. I mean, it's not just corona. It has been used, and it's been put, you can put instruments in a chamber and doing it. The one caution that we have is that there is a shadowing effect, where if something is in the shadow of the UV light, it's not being disinfected. And there's also a breakdown in the materials. Like with your goggles and all of that and gear, it's recommended not to use it more than 20 times before you start getting a breakdown in materials. So 254 is extremely dangerous to people. The safer nanometer range is kind of a 222 nanometers that has mostly UVC in it. But UVA and UVB are still present in 222 because of our light sources. We just can't produce a light source that's going to narrow in exactly. So my caution is, please don't put this type of lighting where people are going to be exposed to it. They're looking at it more for the air systems and air ducts, cleaning the air, but it takes time to do it. So time and shadowing are extremely important with it, and product, and making sure that the products, and there are some manufacturers that have modeling that you can take the nanometers of a particular light and the UV component and run almost like we would a photometric data set with it. And so it's extremely important to get that photometric data set of the UV and being able to see what effectiveness is in a space.
Okay. I have a lot of Chinese manufacturers who keep sending me data on devices, especially UV guns, which can be used to sterilize the doorknobs and stuff like that, which they particularly say that 265 nanometers is what, according to Chinese labs, kills the coronavirus in 15 seconds. I don't know how credible it is. I've asked for certifications. I haven't got any certifications, but any views on that?
I would say be careful, because it takes a lot more than 15 seconds at those nanometers.
Well,
and
that's
shadowing.
What they claim is, unlike you mentioned 254 nanometers, they say that 265 particularly kills the coronavirus if it is exposed to 15 seconds. That's the claim. It's not just one manufacturer. I've seen at least 15 manufacturers sending me this data. I've asked them for certification, anything from WHO, no, but they said that we can give a certification from a Chinese laboratory. I don't know what they're hiding on corona, but this is something which seems to be coming from there.
And to me, I'm not a medical doctor or a laboratory, so I can't give an opinion on it. I have just seen of what is being used by credible laboratories, independent, and looking at it. And they said it is time exposure. It does degrade materials and shadowing. Those are the three things. And human exposure is incredibly important to stay out of the UVA and UVB. So what is a light source? That would be my first thing. People have said, oh, it's an LED. Well, LEDs do have too much in the UVB and UVA category. So get that whole distribution, spectral distribution, and to find out what the intensity is.
Okay, Richard, you want to add something on this?
Yeah, I was actually, funnily enough, I was reading a research report this morning, which is fresh out of Japan. And coming back to your, sorry, this is a Star Wars reference, but coming back to your lightsaber, I would say that the 15-second, or how long did you say it was?
15 seconds, 265 nanometers.
The 15 seconds is about as real as Darth Vader.
Good looking gun.
The Japanese Testing and Research Institute, which has been looking at certification for these systems, is actually guaranteeing bacteria and viral freedom. I do have to say this isn't focused on the COVID virus specifically. This is on general sterilization. But I think everyone's very clear COVID is today, and no one knows what tomorrow is, except there will be a new one of these coming along in a few years' time, is 40 minutes for guaranteed freedom.
Yeah.
So 30 minutes, it's pretty close. 20 minutes, it's not bad. At 10 minutes, it's more or less effective to get rid of approximately half the contamination. But if you really want this safety, which in my opinion is what people are trying to buy, at the moment people aren't buying lighting solutions. If they're interested in this, they're buying safety and health. And I do think that we have a responsibility in industry to be honest about this. It's a little bit like some of the problems that I felt when people say, oh, human-centric lighting makes everybody more healthy. Well, hold on a second. Let's be really careful about the research data about this. And let's look at what we really mean by human-centric. Let's look at the research data and let's come up with an intelligent solution. There is no one light fitting which you're going to put in your office which makes everyone equally happy. And just in the same way, there's no 15-second spray a few UV photons around and hope that your building is sterilized forever. So I do think, yeah, it's naturally, for all the right reasons, it's an incredibly excited research field. Also, I would say with a moment of caution, possibly for some of the wrong reasons, because there are a lot of people looking for new business. And, you know, we saw, at least in Europe, I can't comment for other regions in the world, but, you know, 4 weeks ago, if you wanted to buy a simple 10-cent paper face mask on some of the big online platforms, you were paying 20 euros, yeah, for one piece. So there are a lot of people who I would say, in old-fashioned words, are profiteering off the crisis. And of course, I mean, I saw one the other day, it popped up in my email, like a mobile phone sterilizer, which has 2 slightly blue chips in it, costs $20. You put your mobile phone in it, shut it like a old-fashioned wallet, and then your mobile phone is sterilized. Well, honestly, you're better off with a baby wet wipe than you are with that type of sterilization.
Yeah, and I completely agree with Richard. I think caution, and we as line designers and architects, we need to look at the data, making sure it's coming from viable resources, that we do take into account the potential harm on humans from long-term exposure. And I completely agree that, and you know, and the questions to ask is, what is the UV distribution, spectral distribution? How much UVA is in it? How much UVB? Because those are the 2 things we need to be in the far UVC range. But light sources, and for all of you manufacturers out there, look at light sources that we could get that would narrow in. And the other thing was 254 nanometers. That is produced outside of our atmosphere, and the ozone layer protects us from it. The other thing that I've heard from the researchers is that the viruses could mutate to start not being affected by that 254. So the more exposure we have to it, the issue. And it's all of those. It's not going to be a solution forever.
Okay, great. I would now ask Bobby to give his views on particularly the hospitality industry, since we do a lot of hotel projects. Where do you think the COVID scenario is taking the hospitality scenario into?
Well, out of all our projects, I think around 25-30% has got on hold. The remaining are still on. But I foresee there's going to be huge budget cuts, you know, in in the previous budgetary allocations they might have had for the same project. The only way to make these projects viable is to sensibly source everything, sensibly at a more sensible costing. I think a time will come where now's the time when I think the Indian manufacturers will start coming out more in the front. And because I have noticed that the cost of manufacturing these technical lights or landscape lighting, they're not really comparable to the West or some of the Western companies getting it done out of China, but they are halfway there, So this is a great time for them to up their act and get themselves to be technically more superior. And the cost of these Indian-made manufactured lights is much lower than the international brands that we've been sourcing in the past. And it's not that you can't create, a wonderful atmosphere, ambience with that you have to use, a high-end, Italian, German, Belgian light company. We have been able to...
Just a quick thing. Where do you think the hospitality industry is going? Because this is one industry which I feel is going to get affected on a long-term basis. It's not a transient thing. At least two industries which I feel is not very transient. One is hospitality, one is aviation. One thing what COVID has taught everyone is we can effectively do web meetings. So you literally don't have to travel to places to do meetings. I mean, it's going to be now more of online stuff rather than visiting the place and doing meetings. So that means there are going to be lesser number of rooms sold. So I think hospitality industry is going to be affected. But from a lighting perspective, what's your take on it?
See, I think in terms of the ongoing hospitality projects or the ones that are existing, it's some of the resort hotels which are outside the big cities will continue to survive because people are going to get a fill of working out of home and that kind of stuff, But when they do need a change, they will. And also the upmarket hotels, the 5-star deluxe properties, the people who go to these hotels, they have enough buying power. They had it then, they will continue having it. So when it comes to luxury hospitality, that's going to continue staying. It will. Those guys will land up going to Maldives. They will go to Seychelles. They will go stay in an Amman resort or a Four Seasons in some exotic location. All that will continue. What I foresee is the city hotels that are going to take a hit. And so it's not that there are no city hotels getting built right now. They are under construction and they are getting made. Certain industries will continue booming. Even if it comes to software businesses, yes, 50% of the travels will reduce. But even if you consider the 50% of the people that will travel, it does land up in a lot of hotel room sales per night, per year, So it's not going to go up. It is how we build these hotels efficiently at a lower cost. Lighting is an important part of that. So how can we create effective, good atmosphere using, minimal expenses? So that's where Indian manufacturing comes in. And also, of course, using sensibly. Earlier we would use multiple downlights or, cove lighting and all that stuff within one room, within one guest room. Now we'll have to be a little more efficient in terms of even number of lights or fittings that are used.
Okay. Zarir, your take on it from a hospitality perspective and maybe residential as well? Zarir, you're muted.
Zarir, your microphone's off.
Yeah, sorry. I'll offer my comments on the residential aspect of it. With this entire coronavirus problem, we've all been experiencing a lockdown for the last 2 odd months. I see a lot of focus coming back into the quality and comfort of homes because with this whole concept of work from home gaining popularity, definitely with the virus, we're coming out of the virus. It's very close to the scenario right now. Right now, a lot of people will be working out of home. How long they will continue to work out of home and how soon they will get back in full strength to the office, only time will tell. It's very speculative. But having said that, the focus has definitely come back on the home itself. If people are going to work out of the home, if people are compelled to stay home because of a virus, today corona, tomorrow something else, things like Sanjay mentioned, natural lighting, to bring in natural light, to focus on ventilation. Even architecturally speaking, as designers, we're going to look back at forms where people can communicate. Occupants of apartments can communicate with each other. Neighbors can see each other. Interaction between the individual and the life on the street. Even though you're maintaining social distancing, these things are going to become very relevant. Coming from the lighting perspective for residences today, if you're homebound, you're stuck in a house for the last 2 months, however large your home may be, you would like your home to be well illuminated, bright and cheerful. I would say I'm not feeling I've been on a holiday for the last 2 months. I am actually straining at the leash to get back to office. I'm a person who likes to be in office and works closely with my team. So to work remotely doesn't come naturally to me, at least. So illumination in the house, it's got to be a lot brighter, a lot more cheerful. The whole concept of being cooped up in your house for this long is depressing enough. Coming down to things like automation, lighting control systems, that also is incredibly helpful. It helps you to see your apartment, your space in a different mood at different times of the day. I mean, you could be working in the daytime, you've got much more brighter light. In the evenings, when you're unwinding, you're relaxing with some soft music, you've got much more mellow lighting. So all these concepts, which have always been there, it's not new, but these things are going to be looked at far more seriously, even by the normal middle class household, I feel. So slowly people are going to pay a lot more attention to lighting, as they ought to have in the first place. But it's going to bring people back into illuminating their spaces a lot better. So finally, the intention being to create a much more vibrant living space.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. I've recently finished doing on my house. I have great lighting in my house. But what I've noticed during the COVID period is that somehow we binge watch Netflix all the while, and you end up shifting your clock by almost 12 hours. Literally, there have been times when I sleep at 6 a.m. and I wake up at 6 p.m. So what's actually happening is your clock is getting completely desynchronized. And I was actually wondering if I had human-centric or circadian lighting in my house to really help in at least syncing my secretions of the brain properly, so that you get a much better lifestyle. It's just a thought. I would want Viraj to give her inputs on various residential. She does all kinds of projects. So Viraj.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So today, Praveen, more than anything else, I think there's fear. And I do believe that once this fear passes, things will change. But some changes that will happen today might be forever. And they are all positive changes. So spaces are going to become more contactless. Safety is going to be out in the open. We will continue to work from home, but that's going to be work that we do independently with our heads down on our desk. But when we want to collaborate, we will step into our offices. The hospitality industry is going to take some time to come back to what it was, but I think it eventually will. But we as designers will end up designing those spaces a little differently. I think we will focus more on wellness. I think the materials we'll select will be different. We'll start looking at things that we'll be able to clean faster, which give people a sense of comfort. So I do believe that this is a transient phase. We will come back to normal. it will take some time, but human beings are wired like that. And I think we are social beings and we will be back and out again.
Great. So to summarize, I guess we will have more of lighting controls with occupancy sensors and stuff like that. We will have possibly more of human-centric and circadian lighting happening. I think that's what is the gist of what we will be looking at in detail. Richard, your input on what would be the future or how lighting design would change in the transient phase and for good for the future, because we're looking at transitioning of the lighting.
Okay, so my perspective, and this is something which I'm seeing a lot from my client side, is that people are more and more interested in which applications are going to suffer, and I agree broadly with everything that the rest of the panel has said in terms of the challenges, but also how lighting is deployed. I think we got one very valuable insight from the panel a couple of minutes ago. To my shame, I can't remember who mentioned it. But I think the question about, for example, do people want to meet in groups? Yes. I think what we're seeing already is an acceleration of a workplace trend, which we've been seeing in many countries for now, I'd say at least 5 years, maybe even 10, which is if the task is completed more or less in isolation, it doesn't need to be done in an office. If a task is one which requires interaction with other co-workers, then it's easier in an office. And I think that transition is actually offering us a very bright space. I also think what this is meaning is that, and I was speaking to a couple of architects in London last week, one of their biggest work packages at the moment is how to look at office design to create safer workspaces. I've been answering a couple of questions as best I can on the Q&A group here, which is running in the background to this session. And one of the questions which came up from a participant was very good, which is when will an office space basically be safe? And I said, well, it really depends on how many people are infected in the office. It also depends on how you get to and from the office. There is no such thing as safe or not safe. The only question is, what are your chances of infection? And also possibly what's the risk of infection to you personally? We already know, because we're starting to get very good data, that infections have hugely different progressions depending on underlying health conditions of people who have been touched by this. And so it's a very tricky one to say. For lighting, I think the smarter lighting, as I put in my presentation, in other words, lighting which becomes more flexible, more reactive, and more integrated into the built environment, and also the idea, for example, of building air handling, qualitative improvements, sterilization improvements. So I'm not talking about spraying UV photons around the office, but I'm talking specifically about, for example, taking traditional air handling systems, which are very common in big European offices, and treating the air through the light fitting, which it's already going through, to create the sterilization effect. Does that make the office safe? No. Does it make it safer? Absolutely. And we're speaking right now about relative risk reduction. I don't want to bore you too much with statistics, but roughly 60% of the people who pass away each year in the United Kingdom pass away from cancer or heart attacks. Roughly this year in the UK, approximately, I think at the moment, about 0.3%, I think, of the people who pass away will pass away with COVID. So there are greater threats to our health than COVID. Now, I'm not saying for a moment, hey, take it easy, let's go all out, let's ignore the government guidelines, let's do this. Of course I'm not saying that. But we have to look at risk as a perspective and risk as a factor. You know, if you say to someone, 35,000 people have died, which is the current number for the United Kingdom, that's a horrible figure. It's 35,000 people who are missing for their families. There's no question that that's a massive bereavement. And I know there are other countries which are worse affected. At the same time, it's a small number in contrast to the overall situation of a population. And so I think we need to come right back to the question for lighting developments, which is to say smart lighting going forward needs to be lighting which reflects changing in building standards, which supports that, lighting that finally becomes more flexible. Lighting is too static in many cases. It's focused on a task for an area somewhere in the building. It's focused on providing 50-foot candles or 500 lux on a particular desk because that's what the energy code says. We need to think much more about, okay, if it's no longer a single user office, but actually sometimes it's a canteen, sometimes it's a coffee space, sometimes it's a meeting area, sometimes it's a video conferencing area. How can the different lighting opportunities, which are easy and cheap and accessible today, how can these all make the spaces a lot more multifunctional than they've been until now? And it's the same if you're thinking about a classroom, it's the same if you're thinking about a clinical environment. We need to accept the fact that spaces are probably going to be used less and in more different ways than ever before. And whether this is residential, that a room which maybe in the evening is actually a sleeping area, but during the day becomes an office, that also has an impact on the type of lighting and the way we're thinking about the challenge from a lighting design, from an architectural, even from a furnishings perspective, than other issues. So I think what's really going to be clear after this is thinking how we can be more creative, I would say, and I know that lighting design is a hugely creative profession, but how can we be even more creative, less within the confines of what's possible in good lighting design, but also working together with the architects and specifiers to think about new ways of driving different implementations forward, which will allow reacting to those changes.
Okay, great. Nancy, from an American perspective, we want to know what's happening in terms of, the way forward. Are we looking at work from home being more and more popular? Because I've heard that Facebook and Google has actually asked people to work from home till 2021. But again, I feel that's again transient. Is it going to be permanent, or is it going to be certain industries which are going to be have to go to work and certain industries where you can work from home? What's your perspective on this?
I think it is going to be permanent. That I know with my own staff, a lot of people have had huge commute times, and they said, instead of commuting, I can wake up, I can go for a run, I can come home, and I'm still ready to go at 8 in the morning. And they have really said, could we maybe, once we get back to normal, only come into the office for a couple days where we're doing collaborative work, but we can stay home.
From a designer's perspective?
Yeah, I am.
I told you. From a designer's perspective, it's different. I'm talking primarily about the big American companies like the blue chip companies, financial institutions, things like that. Because those are the ones which actually worry us in India. Because most of the big offices which we have in India are Facebook and Amazon and stuff like that. So I want it from an American perspective, how is it going to be there? And then we can look at how it's going to be here.
It is going to change here, from regardless of anybody who is working primarily on computers and doing programming with, VPNs, very prevalent, looking at all the large financial institutions, designers, software manufacturers, definitely more of a remote working situation. And so I think our challenge, it's a wonderful challenge for lighting designers and for architects that think of every single space of being repurposed into something else. That today it may be an office, tomorrow it may be affordable living, or it could be a combination of small cafes. That every single space, how do we design, how do we get the daylighting to do this so that it can be repurposed into other things? And like Richard was talking about and others on the panel, it's going to be more personalized lighting or being able to change moods. This is something that I think we've all looked at versus just putting in overhead 2x4s everywhere throughout and say, well, it's office lighting. That's no longer the way we're going to be doing things. We're going to be lighting surfaces, understanding that every space could be repurposed. And yes, there's going to be a trend for all industry to have less commuting and less all going to an office because you have to, that you have that choice.
Okay, great. Now I'll take this from an Indian perspective. Sanjay, I would want you to throw some light on what the market looking like? I mean, you do a lot of large corporate offices. I want to know whether any of those projects have got shelved, or are there, is it all going smooth?
So fortunately for us, the large projects, the larger ones, they haven't stalled. They want to look at their workplaces. They're saying, yes, that we'll have to come back to normal someday. But what's also happening in the short term, they are allowing people to work from home. So there'll be low density in the offices. Going forward, there may be policies and technology will also catch up. See, what this situation will force for technology companies to come up with high-speed data, working from home, how are you effective working from home? So there'll be solutions. So once you have these solutions and people are effective working from home, organizations are thinking of coming up with policies where they allow people who don't have to necessarily come to office, they can work from home. And if they can be effective and they can deliver.
The reason why I asked this is most of the large companies we work with, there's a lot of data security issue. I mean, you know, the amount of security they put in, even within offices. One section need access to go to another section and stuff like that. So if people are going to work from home, how is that going to work?
Yeah, so we are working with organizations, let's say, who are handling salaries of employees, so which is high security. So they also struggling with this situation right now. So they don't have the solution. But what this situation will push these organizations to come up with solutions for data security, how you can work from home and secure data. So that's one thing. And also there could be this need for people who don't need data security. Maybe they are allowed to work from home. People who have to be in an environment where it is highly secretive and you can't even take your mobile phones into the office. Let's say banking, BPOs that work for banking and that kind of stuff. So they will have trouble here because data security, rightly said, they will want people to come and work from their offices. So yes, it's a challenge, and the industry is thinking around all these lines.
Okay, so from your perspective, you don't see any shelving of any of the existing projects, and you think there is prospective projects coming up?
See, there is going to be a contraction, like the economy is going to contract. So it's not like we will not be impacted. So like, whether this will be, recession will be bigger than 2008 or what is this going to be like, we don't know yet how the economies are going to restart or reset, what will happen. But as of now, the projects that are on ground or let's say in design, so people are, we don't see that panic right now amongst our clients. They're still going ahead with their projects. But yes, people who had plans, let's say planning to take more space, they have currently they've pushed a pause button. They're saying right now we're not going to take any new decision regarding new space. So people who have signed up, they're going ahead with their projects. People who were going to sign up new space, they have definitely put a pause button onto those scenarios, because if they're going to lose people or they're going to contract and allow people to work from home, definitely there will be they won't need that much space in the near future. So why take those calls if they can push this out by, let's say, 6 months to a year, these costs? So definitely they want to push these costs out by 6 months to a year.
Got it. Jimmy, you're also an entrepreneur. You have Dell Adventure and the resorts and stuff like that. What's your take on how things are going to look like moving forward?
Praveen, landlords and tenants have already started getting into negotiations and renegotiations. There is a minimum slash of about 30 to 40% on rentals that tenants are demanding, and or else they are ready to vacate the premises. If you ask any lawyer right now, the lawyers are more busy than the normal time during lockdown, and it's a direct result of what I'm talking about. Not only office and commercial spaces, even hospitality. Hotel owners have started negotiating with the operators on their fees. So there is every kind of cost cutting, and the low hanging fruit is the real estate, is the investment, is the rentals. This is a low hanging fruit, and then people are going to do a slash in terms of manpower and remove any fat that's there in an organization. So it's a serious thing, and that's where people with core competencies will shine out, and people who are excess baggages will be removed out. This is ought to happen in any environment which is adverse like this right now. However, new businesses and new economies will flourish within an environment like this. A lot of new things will come from behind that we didn't even expect or imagine. Like I said it the other day, and I'm saying it again. Luxury home sales, according to me, pre-COVID and post-COVID. Pre-COVID, it was a very sad scenario, and there was no offtake and transactions are not happening. Post-COVID, according to me, transactions will move far faster on the luxury segment. Reason being, people have been at home. They value their human lives, and they've understood, to hell with it. I'm going to spend something more, but I'll get a lifestyle for me and my family, because it's gone down and sunk into people. They never had a chance to reflect on themselves as much as we all have had a chance to reflect on ourselves and our lives and our families. So these changes ought to happen. Second home sales were very bad and dismal before COVID. Second home sales is going to be doing good, according to me, because people will want to now move out of the city. Next time there's a lockdown, I'm sure we have about 90 villas in Lonavala and we do second homes. All villa owners are now waiting to move to that in the second lockdown. So as soon as they're allowed to get out, let's say if there's a second lockdown, I'm sure practically every villa will be occupied there. People will want to move out of cities and move into open spaces. Automatically, social distancing will happen. They'll have more freedom on their life, and they'll be able to have a better quality of life. Coming back to our lighting industry, there is a lot of scope, like I said. Home office retrofits, rechanging in office industry complete. Either departments are going to move into remote offices, which is my prediction, and I'm very gung-ho on that. Departments will move away from each other, and a central location they'll only come to collaborate, because a lot of collaboration in a large office happens within the department. Intra-department collaboration with the HOD level is very, very limited, but within the department, maximum collaboration happens. So whole HR might move into one area, finance might move into one area, just as offices were 20 years back. So when we used to design large offices and bring 19 city offices into one large office like Adfactors, the whole building, they moved into one place from 19 locations. Now I see them move back to 19 locations, and some of them will not be required. I was speaking to another large electrical cable company, and they had the same thing. They were shutting down a couple of offices. So it's all organizations generically are talking about cost cut. It's a reality. There will be business. Yes, projects will happen. Like I said, we are like lawyers. If we downsize, you'll need architects and designers. If you upsize, you'll need architects and designers. I mean, our jobs are secured, but this is our time as a design fraternity to don our empathetic design hats and try and empathize with the clients and see how best we can make their lives less miserable than they already are. Be it in offices, be it in hotels, be it in hospitals. I mean, anywhere and everywhere. There is a lot for all our industries to learn from the hospital industry, and this is the time for architects and design industry to learn from there. A lot of the things applicable there will now be applicable to all our vertical fraternities. In hotels, you'll see housekeeping staff out in the open, which you used to always hide them and make them work at night. You'll see them in the daytime. These changes ought to happen. And with empathy, if the design industry raises up to the occasion, we can make human lives better, be it in public areas, be it in commercial areas, be it in hotels, restaurants, all the spaces.
Great.
We have a major role to play.
Great. A general question to all the panelists. How do you think lighting and lighting design is going to improve for the transient period and for the future for good? Who would like to start?
IoT is going to be impacting at a very, very low cost the quality of life that a person gets by doing that small investment. And once, by and large, the generic population, the middle class community that still now has been using an incandescent lamp or a fluorescent tube light, which is 90% prevalent in rural India, once they start understanding that IoT can be applied at a very economical cost, believe you me, it will revolutionize. And therein, lighting designers and lighting supply companies will have a field day, because the more you educate the consumer, the more business and work you have. So to me, there is a huge opportunity out there. How can we capitalize on it? It's for time to see. But I think lighting designers and professionals have a huge role to play in improving the quality of life of a normal Indian.
Bobby, your inputs?
I don't see a very big change happening in the future from what we have.
I think it is a transient.
Yeah, it's a transient thing. See, firstly, we're talking about work from home and stuff, but end of the day in India, how many people work from home or will work from home? A large part of the population has to work at a site, or a factory or on, at site. It's only a certain class of people that will have the privilege of working from home. So yes, if you want to just target those people, yes, their entire home environment has to change. Like I foresee, I see some of the staff in my office struggling working in their present home because their homes are not set up. They do not have the right workstation. They do not have the right lighting in terms of to create a work kind of a space. So, so more and more as time goes by, if this work from home starts becoming more common, you will end up, people will end up modifying their homes a bit. And that's where one of the aspects in modification is lighting. So, as Jimmy's saying, if at a low cost we can find a solution, I think everyone will go towards doing that, to start with.
So IoT for home seems
but when it comes to our projects, new projects, like the high end, when it comes to luxury homes and stuff, probably there might not be any compromise. They will still buy, high-end technical lights from Iguzini, Zumbo Bell, Aircall, that stuff will happen, and decorative lights as well. But when it comes to commercial projects where you're looking at return on investment, they are going to rethink all aspects. It's not going to be like as easy as it used to be earlier. We'll have to find cost-effective solutions. At the same time, we want to be creative. So I think we must support and help Indian companies grow and come out. For example, for our projects in Thailand, it's a small country and we depend on entire local Thai manufacturing, for the local projects. And some of the quality of the local companies are so good that we use their products in Middle Eastern projects right up to the Caribbean. They're able to service it. If the Thais can do it, why can't we do it? As Indians.
Yeah.
And there are many Indian companies out there. They are like boutique operations, or they're not as large as Wipro and Philips and stuff. But if there's enough business coming towards them, they will all grow. And we should help them as being lighting designers for our projects. We should support Indian manufacturing as much as possible and reduce our dependence on imports.
Got it. Zarir, your quick inputs on how lighting design is going to change in the near future?
See, the demand on lighting designers is definitely going to go up exponentially, in fact, if I may say. In the hospitality segment and even in larger commercial offices, lighting designers are already playing a key role. In the residential segment, the lighting designers have come in or found a foothold only in the high-end residences. I see that kind of filtering down even to the mid-level homes. And soon enough, people will realize that they need stylists, like they need landscape architects, like they need structural consultants. A lighting consultant is a necessity on every project that you undertake. So I see this as an excellent time for lighting designers, at least in India.
Great. That sounds interesting for us.
Oh, it does. Interesting times.
Good.
No, there's another aspect too. I think that the Indian designers will be good times for them, because a lot of our competition is from overseas in our kind of projects, in the 5-star hotel segment. And now the idea of flying them down from far off places where there are no flights available is going to be restricted. Is going to be getting them visas. Our Indian government's also going to look at certain countries in a funny way. So I think
that search for the international consultants will reduce both in lighting design as well as in architecture, I guess.
Good news, Bobby.
So I think it's also time for us to make hay while sun shines, and take advantage of the situation which I foresee happening in the next couple of years. That after 2 years things will probably level out back to good old days or okay days. But at least for the next 2 years, I think we will being Indian designers in India, we will rule the roost.
Okay, Viraj, you want to add something quickly, and then we can wind up?
Apart apart from what everyone else said, our spaces are merging. Our homes are becoming offices, and lighting will play a very important role. And video conferencing is becoming such a large aspect of our life, like we are merging our physical and our virtual. And so we are re-looking at the way we are perceived. And there, I think at that point, I want to look right, and lighting will be very, very important.
All right, great.
Color changing lighting for the different quality of the conference meetings.
Yes.
Praveen, do you mind if I go in briefly, because I think we can answer about 4 of the currently open questions. I have not been on Facebook typing away. I've actually been trying to catch up with the very good questions that the audience has been placing. I've only managed 21, but I think we can do 4 in one shot. So there's quite a few people who have been asking about, for example, how the COVID challenges will be affecting, or the market challenges they will be affecting price finding due to the competitive nature of the market. Firstly, I'd like to share a little bit of enthusiasm with the participants and also with the panel. I go to a lot of countries. Sorry, I should say I used to go to a lot of countries. Right now I stay in my office at home. And every country I go to reminds me about how competitive and how bad the prices are and how tough the market is. And I'm still waiting to go to that one country where they say, hey, Richard, we get really good money for our lighting fittings. There's no competition here. But I didn't find that market yet. Will COVID-19 affect prices in a positive or a negative way? Will it mean that government projects get better? Will it mean that lighting designers are focusing on standards? Well, honestly, I hope so. For a start, all aspirational lighting manufacturers, and that also includes aspirational designers who are specifying those manufacturers, can be pushing more for standards. I know it's tough. I know the specification business is not an easy game. But honestly, if we collectively, whether it's as a manufacturer side, a specifier side, an installer side, if we use products which are substandard or don't fulfill the standards, because there's some magical budget pressure, the only reason the budget pressure is there is because we're allowing it to exist throughout the value chain. And I think it's really important that we need to be optimistic about this and say, sure, we can use dimmable solutions, sure, we can use daylight harvesting, sure, we can bring more natural light into the built environment, sure, we can look at color shift systems. Good doesn't mean expensive. And I've seen in my time, I've probably been to India in the last 20 years, I'm guessing about 80 times, 100 times. So I wouldn't quite say I've got a permanent series of hotel rooms around the country, but I've definitely visited quite a number of times. It's a fabulous country. You have creative designers, you have the resources, you have the possibilities. And I really think strongly that driving this value chain forward and being creative and differentiated and not just trying to look for the minimum standard acceptable, but actually taking a look outside this and saying, well, how can we integrate a more interesting solution into this? This is a much more interesting way to go forward. I know it's a tough road. I know the price pressures are there. I know the customs issues are there. I know that there's a lot of pressure, but nevertheless, I really believe in India and its capacity to innovate.
All right. Are there any other relevant questions which have not been answered? Because I somehow missed out this and I didn't really...
I tried to answer as many as I could. So sorry for the attendees if I only managed to answer 21 questions. So sorry about that.
How many questions are there?
Well, there are 19 open, but I think some of them are almost a seminar in their own right. I think, for example, I mean, there's a couple of questions about fragmentation of manufacturers in the Indian industry. And I think that's quite focused from a manufacturer perspective. So maybe if we just stay on track for today, and I think maybe we could suggest to my fellow panelists, if we review the questions afterwards, and I hope that will be okay for the attendees who feel unanswered, maybe we could get back to this with a small PR thing or something like that afterwards, or make them specific topics for the next time we do one of these sessions.
If it's questions which we can reply back via email, I think that would be a better option. All questions can be answered. But there is no way that anybody can ask a question directly on the Zoom call, is it?
Yeah. There's a
There
huge
is, there
amount of
is, there is
questions.
a way. There is a way.
Yeah, they've been asking questions all along.
If you look down at the bottom of your screen, Praveen, there's the number 19 and Q&A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the
So
open questions.
what we could do is we could ask any of the attendees to raise their hand, and we could turn on their mic.
Correct.
I mean, we could just pick up like 2 or 3 questions.
I guess that's a good idea.
Yeah, so we have Vijay Purohit who has raised his hand first. So we'll just go and get him to. Okay. Yeah, allowed to talk. Okay, he is.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, is that Vijay?
Yeah.
Yes, Vijay. Can you please put your question to the panel?
Yeah. Thank you. Namaste to all from India.
Namaste.
Yeah. Okay. Sir, my question is, you are talking about middle class and Indian companies, smaller companies. Okay. Because it's in India, it's officer said that it's very difficult to work with work at home. It's very difficult for us to work at home. So we want some solutions which are touchless, contactless lighting solutions for middle class Indians at home, as well as for manufacturing companies. Because right now I'm working as an electrical head in a smaller group, and in these situations I'm always trying to switch off the lights by switching off the switch whenever I leave the office. At least 10 to 15 times a day, I always switch off the light, fans, ACs, and I'm having difficulty, and I'm having some worried while I was touching that switches. So we need this kind of solutions, which are cheap also, and we can redesign it, because so many Indian companies are already 10, 12, 15 years old, and it's difficult to retrofit these type of fittings. So we need some solution, because so that we can have some energy saving also with the contactless switching of the equipment.
Yeah, a lot of solutions are available which are ready to use retrofit solutions with automation systems. Alexas and Echoes have gone dirt cheap now, and you can use these systems in your offices, either localized or generalized the way you want to. Apps are coming with almost every supplier. So be it Wipro, be it Philips, be it a lot of the companies are offering retrofit solutions, and I'm sure you can use them.
Sir, that's good, but right now it's difficult to retrofit at home actually.
No.
Even for home solutions are available. Just check up. Lots of solutions as packages are available ready.
Yeah.
Vijay, there are solutions where you can retrofit, and in your existing switchboard, there can be a relay which can be put behind it, and then you can control it either through your mobile phone or through a remote.
Okay, sir.
It's available with a lot of small manufacturers. It's not expensive. It's quite economical. So that's one of the options where you can retrofit this. Or the other alternative is you can keep your switches on, and between the switch and your light fixture or your fan, you can put an occupancy sensor. That's easier done, and that way it will automatically turn on and turn off. You don't have to even turn off the switch. You make the switch redundant, and then you can let the occupancy sensor take over.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Do you want to take up one more question from the audience?
Yeah, we can take one or two.
Okay. Any particular names that you recognize from the people with the hands raised?
Where do you see the hands raised? I haven't really seen.
Just go to the chat box, open it up now.
Okay, so we have Dallas Lighting. So let's take him in. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we have somebody from Dallas Lighting to speak.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. It's Mahesh here from Dallas Lighting. It was a great insight. Thank you, first of all. So my question for all lighting designers out there is like, how do you see the scope or the demand for make in India products? Because I think there is very, for lighting designers, I think there's a very minimalistic options in terms of beam angles, color temperatures when it comes to Indian manufacturers. And there are many companies out there who give you...
I don't agree with you. We have a lot of Indian manufacturers. In fact, I use 80% of my projects with Indian manufacturers and Chinese manufacturers. Currently, China bashing is going on, so there is more potential for Indian manufacturers, and there are extremely good quality stuff which can get in India.
Okay. Now, my question is like, see, the one who are already that benefit, I think they are doing either SKD or import from China. So how about the one who is how about the manufacturers who does everything here in India? I don't think so. There's as many manufacturers are.
There are not many, but at least I can count 8 to 10 good manufacturers who can be at par with European manufacturers and also Chinese manufacturers. I'm not saying Chinese manufacturers are bad; they're extremely good as well. I compare good quality Chinese stuff and good quality European stuff at par. And there are 8 to 10 really good manufacturing facilities in India where you get extremely good quality luminaires.
Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Okay. We have somebody somebody called Ritesh Jain who's also put a question in the Q&A, so we'll get him to talk.
Yep.
Hi Ritesh, are you here? Ritesh?
I think his mic is muted.
Yes.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, Ritesh.
First of all, thank you everyone, and it was a great time with you all. So my question is, what would be the changes in the designing aspects post COVID-19, and what would be the new normal for lighting industries post COVID?
Well, that's the kind of topic that we discussed this whole 1.5 hours on. But yeah, like I said, what we can conclude is, my take on it is, this is a transient phase. Yes, some of it might become permanent. It's like how before 9/11 you never had security checks at airports. Now it's becoming new normal. And similarly, there might be a lot of other things which are going to be a normal, like, for example, either fumigating your baggage or, some way of sanitizing your baggage before getting into an airport, things like that. But some things are going to be transient and a lot of things are going to stay. There's, of course, a lot of scope for lighting controls and automated lighting. I think that would increase much more. Touchless lighting, of course, would be something which everybody would want to look at, because that's something which, of course, is going to stay for the long run. Anybody else wants to add in to this question? Are we on?
Yeah, we are very much on.
All right. So
I think we just agree with you.
I guess that's what it is. I mean, as per me, this is a transient phase, and in a year or max 1.5 years, we are going to get back to normal. There will be few changes which will happen, and that will stay on forever. That's what is my take on, as for from a lighting perspective.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so are we done?
All right, so I guess this was a great session, and I hope everybody loved the discussions, and it was informative for everyone. I definitely would like feedback from all of the people who participated in terms of whether the information was good and how we can improve things in possibly the next webinar. And I also welcome all of you to be part of the 2020 International Lighting Summit, which we are planning to have in December, on December 17th and 18th in Delhi. That's the plan as of now. We might change it to Mumbai as well, but as of now, the plan is to have it in Delhi on 17th and 18th. And looks like it is a sweet spot when everything will open up, and hopefully we will all be back to being able to attend a conference without masks and stuff like that. Thank you all.